Hi everyone. Next up we're going to have Jun Boh from HoYoverse. I hope you enjoy his talk.
Thank you, Kakel. Hope I pronounced that right. Yep, so I'm Jin. I'm a software engineer based in Singapore. I currently worked at HoYoverse, previously known as MiHoYo. It's a gaming company. So I understand the topic for today is gaming, so I specially rewrote my script a couple of times. The very first version of my script, it's going to sound a little ridiculous, but I actually threw it into ChatGPT, and I was like, okay, here's my profile. I'm a front-end engineer here. Write the script for me. And it generated a 1-hour script for me, and I sent that to a couple of my friends, and I was like, hey guys, I'm going to use this script for the conference. Let me know what you think. And most of my friends were like, this looks totally generated by ChatGPT. That's when I knew that I had to write the script by hand. So for those of you out there wondering if AI can completely replace us, I think at this point, no, not yet. Let's see, the slide clicker. Oh, okay. So just a couple of days ago on Saturday, my partner and I, we flew 17 hours out from Singapore to be here in Lisbon. And we have had the most fantastic time here, really, just exploring our way through the city, or should I say eating our way through the city. There's a lot of really good food in Portugal. She's sitting right there, in fact. Little Asian girl in the corner. Give a holler. So her favorite food, has to be the pastéis de nata. Hope I'm pronouncing that right again. I always thought it's like pastéis de nata, but someone was like, no, it's like pastéis de nata. And she likes desserts, right? But mine have got to be the povo alla guerrero, which I understand. I thought it sounded really sexy when I first heard it, but my Portuguese friends told me, povo alla guerrero, it just means cooked octopus. I was like, oh, okay, it's a little bit of a disappointment. I like the Portuguese name better. And that brings me to the topic of the keynote address for today, which is platform services, the secret sauce of games. Okay, so yes, you're still in a tech conference. Don't worry, I'm not going to be doing a cooking demonstration on stage. I'll explain a little bit why the Povo alla Guerrero inspired my keynote address for today. But before we dive into that, let me take you on a journey through the last 6 to 7 years of my career, just to give you a little bit more context on the kind of unique experiences and the perspectives which I'll be bringing to the table. So it might surprise many of you to learn that I did not actually start my career in the technology industry. I didn't even study computer science. So actually, this was a pretty big pivot for myself. My career probably began in 2018 in banking. So I was interning at the consumer bank back then, and I had been offered a position as a data analyst. So that's where I worked at. As I was still studying in 2018, I basically juggled work and studies for about a year until I graduated in 2019, where I obtained my bachelor's. And then when I graduated, I joined a different bank, and that basically, I basically embarked on like the next 2 most experimental years of my career, I would say, because from 2019 to 2021, I tried a variety of different roles. So I was a product owner, I was a business analyst, I tried my hand at being a front-end engineer and a back-end engineer. And also, I developed an indie game in using C# and Unity engine. That indie game was unfortunately not released, but I will be using it to explore platform services in greater detail later. So we'll get back to that in a bit, but first let's move on. So after this experimental 2 years of my life from 2019 to 2021, I then knew that, okay, I knew that I didn't want to, like just continue on with this like lack of focus and like just keep doing all kinds of different things. It was a very crucial, formative period of my life. It allowed me to acquire the skills I needed in computing because I did not have a computer science background. And it helped me realize, right, that, what I really wanted to do for the next 5 to 10 years was to be a software engineer. So then I took a leap of faith and I set new sights. I set my sights on the big tech industry. And in 2021, I joined TikTok as a full stack engineer. Subsequently, I then moved to HoYoverse or MiHoYo as a front-end engineer. Yeah, so that brings us up to speed from 2018 to SINFO. Okay. These are a couple of products that I have had the opportunity to be a part of, and hopefully you recognize a couple of them, but if you don't, that's okay. So for those who are unfamiliar with these products, the two on the left over here are Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail. They are basically cross-platform games developed by my current company, HoYoverse. The one on the right is a video sharing app called TikTok, made by a company called TikTok. And what do they have? Well, maybe I can throw in a little bit extra, right? So I didn't specifically work on the core product for each of these products, right? The core mechanics, if you will, for each of these products. For instance, the core offering for the games would be really like the game mechanics, the art, and the gameplay itself. For TikTok, it would have to be the recommendation engine. But what I did work on as part of these products was I was in the platform services team, and I helped to work on the platform services supporting these products. So let's bring this back to our little octopus friend here in the bottom right corner, the Povo alla Guerrero. Now, what all these games have in common with this little dish here is that like the Povo alla Guerrero, when I tried it for the first time on Saturday, it kind of reminded me, right, of what really makes like an excellent dish, and we can map this to what makes an excellent software product, what makes an excellent game. So at its core, the Povo alla Guerrero is simply what my Portuguese friends tell me is, it's just a cooked octopus, right? When most people see the dish, they simply see an octopus. But they are missing a very, crucial thing, which is that, to me, this dish is not simply an octopus because it is really the amalgamation, right? The sum of all of the parts that make it up. You have the unique seasonings, you have the potatoes, you have the garlic, the olive oil, and all the other stuff that is, that allows the dish to really create like a symphony of flavors. And I would say all of these surroundings, elements of the dish, truly make it what it is, truly create a magical experience, and truly set it apart from other octopus dishes. For instance, if I just simply boiled an octopus in maybe salt water, you're probably not going to say like, oh, this is not Povo alla Guerrero, even though it's a cooked octopus. Okay, so that brings us to the topic for today. Platform services, the secret sauce of games. Now, if you remember earlier in my introduction, I talked about an indie game that I was trying to develop back in, I think that was 2019. I spent like maybe 1 year on it. So this is the result of that 1 year of game development. I know it doesn't look like much, but bear with me. So, so this game was loosely inspired by Dwarf Fortress and RimWorld. It's a colony simulator game, a colony building game. The graphics were entirely done by my partner. I did all of the coding. The tech behind it is actually pretty cool. So what you're seeing here is a game engine that I actually built from scratch. And then like subsequently I realized, okay, that's not going to be very feasible. So I switched to Unity game engine, and then I built on top of Unity game engine. But it is a highly customized game engine. This is a procedurally generated world, meaning that every time you spin up the game, you start a new game, you're going to get a new world. And it's got like altitudes, it's got weather maps, all kinds of stuff, humidity maps, etc. And then in addition to that, I believe, I had a couple of cool concepts that I tried to weave in, like if any of you are familiar with the Malthus population model. So I tried to incorporate that into the game, so that the idea is that, if you were taking care of the colony, if you're feeding them, if you kept the inhabitants happy, then your colony would experience a population boom, right? So all of this was just running in the back. Okay, allow me to show you a little demo of the game. It's over here. Just gonna play the demo now. Okay, so over here we see we have a very basic UI. We have some character information. We have tile information in the background. The user right here is designating some tiles for the characters to go ahead and mine out. We call this work task. So basically, the user created a work task, and then we see that there are multiple Z layers. So we have set the follow cam on this character. The camera is just going to follow her as she goes all the way up to the surface. And what's remarkable about all of this is that if we could just ignore the shitty graphics for a while, excuse my English. What's remarkable about all of this is that, if I could rewind just a little bit. Okay, over here, after the tile designation has been performed, what we're going to see is that the characters are actually, behind the scenes, they are deconflicting the schedule for the work task, and then they are working together to mine out the earth, mine out the rocks. So what we're seeing is every character in this game has sort of like a rudimentary AI, which is built upon, which allows it, right, to basically determine what task to undertake, what it wants to do. So you're not really controlling the characters per se. You're more of like deciding what the direction of the colony should be, and then the colony themselves will decide if they want to do what you ask them to do. And why I'm sharing this is because for the next part, we're going to do a little deep dive. So unfortunately, we never completed this game, as cool as it looks. I know many of you are disappointed. I also want to play it. But we never completed this game, but what we will do now is a deep dive on what if we actually completed this game, what if we wanted to launch it and then scale it up. So we're going to use this game as an example to do all of this. So first things first, we have to decide where and how we're going to launch it. And as we all know, mobile platform is currently the most accessible platform out there these days. In fact, from this chart here, sourced from the World Bank and United Nations, we see that in 2016, there were, for the first time in history, the number of mobile phone subscriptions exceeded the number of people that are in the world today. So I think undoubtedly, mobile phone is the king of gaming platform right now. So we're just going to go ahead and go with a mobile-first approach. Okay. So earlier we talked about the characters in the game and how every single character has a basic AI attached to it. It's nothing like the AIs of today. This was back in 2019, before ChatGPT, I think. But basically, the characters, right, they have sort of like a priority queue attached to them. And then based on the different tasks that exist out in the world, as well as their immediate needs, such as eating, making babies, building a house, chopping a tree, etc., they would decide, okay, what's the next task that I want to do? What do I want to do next, right? After the character has decided on a task, it would then run a pathfinding algorithm to get to that task. So as you saw earlier, the game has multiple Z layers, very much like Dwarf Fortress, like Minecraft, right? So the pathfinding algorithm I chose for this was the A-star pathfinding algorithm. I won't go too much into it, but it was an optimized version of the A-star pathfinding algorithm, actually. I adapted it for this game's use case. And yeah, so as you might imagine, if this game was running on a mobile phone, even if it was a cheap smartphone, it probably wouldn't, be a big deal to have like just one of these characters. Let's call him Mr. Gobble. Mr. Gobble running around, or maybe a couple of them, or maybe 5 of them. It's not going to be a big problem for the mobile phone to handle all of that. But what if now we had like a few thousand of them running around? What if you're so good at this colony game that your colony is massive and you have a few thousand of them all simultaneously running around the world, doing their own things, and then they also have to perform all this like work scheduling, deconflicting like what they want to do and what their friend wants to do and stuff like that. And then they're all running their own pathfinding algorithms also, each and every single one of them. The multi-threading on this is going to be insane. Your phone is definitely going to lag. And as every new character is added to the game, as every new baby is born, you're just going to see your frame rates per second drop. I wouldn't even say proportionally. I think it's going to be exponential. So, yeah. Let's take a look at another thought experiment. Okay. These days, one of the best ways to keep players engaged for mobile game development is to continuously release new content for the game. For instance, let's take a very simple game, right? Like Temple Run. I think that came out decades ago. Temple Run. When Temple Run first came out, people loved it, but soon they ran out of levels to play, and then the game kind of like just dropped off the charts altogether. Even after the Temple Run developers started releasing new maps, new game mechanisms and stuff like that, it really took quite a while for it to really climb back up the charts. So content, like continuously releasing content, is the key to driving like player engagement, is the key to retaining players. But there is one main problem with releasing new content, and that is as the amount of content increases, it could be in the form of DLCs, downloadable content. It could be in the form of in-game app purchases, or maybe just even like regular game updates on the App Store or Play Store. As the amount of content increases, we're going to see that file size jump significantly. Sorry. There we go. We're going to see that file size jump significantly. And as more and more content gets released, eventually the game file size is going to be so massive that it's not going to be feasible for casual gamers to store this on their mobile phones. Sure, some of the flagship smartphones out there, they support 516 megabytes or a few terabytes or more. But most casual mobile gamers typically only have like maybe a maximum of 200 gigabytes on their phone. So this is just not going to be very sustainable, not scalable in the long run. Now let's assume, right, that our game developers have already done everything they could to optimize on these two problems, on the client side, on the mobile phone side. They have already implemented the most optimal data structures and algorithms out there, and there's really nothing else that they could do, short of asking the players to upgrade their phones. But honestly, it's not going to be very reasonable if you start telling your players, okay, from now on you can't play our game anymore unless you buy the latest iPhone. So, is there anything else we could do? Anyone? Yeah? Oh, no? Okay. Oh, yeah? Taking the processing to the servers. That's a very good reply. And the answer is yes. taking processing to the servers, we call that cloud computing. And that is a part of a superset of services that we call platform services. So basically, the answer to solving all of these pain points lies in the platform services ecosystem. Now let's take a look at these two major pain points over here. So for the first one, game servers are the solution to running all of these computationally intensive workloads, having all of these thousands of AIs running on their own and trying to do all kinds of stuff in the world, right? Running all of that in a game server would be the solution to running that on a mobile phone instead. Additionally, this will free up like graphics, processing for the phone so that it won't lag when it's trying to render other stuff. And game servers don't just do like this computational workload. So they can also help to track stuff like player interactions. They can help to track like the exploration of the world. Things like basically anything that's dynamic, right? And then next up, database servers. Database servers work hand in hand with the game servers. They are a little more static in nature, I would say. It's more of like data storage, as its name suggests. And database services help us to track things like, so imagine if each of these characters, each of these Mr. Gobbles had an inventory of their own. Database services would help us to track like the inventory of each and every one of these characters. And this will significantly free up space on the phone, as compared to if we stored all of this information within the phone game file itself. Additionally, database services can be used to store other things like the state of the game world. Has this tree been chopped or does it still stand? For procedurally generated maps, you definitely have to store that somewhere, because if you don't, every time you log into the game, your map's going to look completely different, right? And we don't want that. You're going to lose all of your save progress. And finally, the last one, content delivery network. Content delivery network, also known as CDN. It's very old technology, but still very good for games. Basically, they act as like geographically distributed networks that help to cache static data and then send that to the end users. Traditionally, CDNs were only used to store and deliver static data, such as let's say the sprite, for instance, right? This sprite, this icon himself, it could be a SVG file or PNG file. It could be comprised of multiple SVG files, for instance, or it could be even a GIF, right? And all of this constitutes a static asset that can be stored in a CDN. But these days, dynamic assets can also be stored in CDNs. And what are some examples of dynamic assets that we can serve from CDN? This would be things like cashier payment systems, login systems, even the menu that you see when the player hits escape. When you hit escape on the game, or if you click on the top right corner and you access that system settings and menu, you have access to the volume controls, exit game, save game, so on and so forth. All of that can actually be served up from a CDN. We don't have to have that running on the user's game itself. Now, what's the key benefit of doing this? Like, why don't we just store it on the user's phone? Apart from saving space, are there any other benefits to it? The answer is yes. So another key benefit of having all of these game servers and CDNs and stuff, right, is that if you want to update these assets, very often you don't even need to patch the game, release a new patch for the game. You don't have to release a new game version and force the user to update the game. You could simply just update the CDN, and when they pull the new assets from the CDN, these assets are all going to be updated. So this is another advantage in that we would be able to update game assets without user inputs themselves. Here is a pretty cool diagram. I did not make this. This was from Amazon Web Service. But it's a pretty cool diagram illustrating, like how all of this that we just talked about might come together. So AWS, as we all know, was one of the early pioneers in cloud computing. These days, there are many other providers, cloud providers such as Alibaba's Aliyun, Microsoft's Azure, and so on and so forth. So we have a lot of options now. Basically, this allows us, right, to turn the game into not just like a game, but we can also turn it into like more of like a platform as a service, or even the software as a service, or even just infrastructure as a service. Like, it allows us to wrap the game up in so many different ways and optimize so much more. Maybe a notable mention that I kind of missed out was that last one in the corner there, cloud service. So I didn't mention this earlier because, well, I'll go into that later, but let's talk about cloud service for a bit. Okay, so cloud service is basically about wrapping up all of this, taking this entire thing here, wrapping it up, and then packaging it up in the cloud, running the game entirely from the cloud. Now, what this means is that, this is a pretty new concept. I think a couple of games are trying to achieve this, but not many have fully achieved it. What this means is that you can run the game completely in the cloud now. Users do not really have to install like large games files. Users do not have to, for instance, update the game anymore, because all of this would be done within the cloud server itself. Other advantages would be such as, since we're using the cloud GPU, the graphical performance of the user's device does not matter anymore. In fact, the only thing that matters would be the user's internet connection. So this is a double-edged sword, because a very stable and strong internet connection is required to maintain, that constant stream of data to and fro from the cloud. But yeah, totally possible. So, I think for our use case, we won't implement the cloud service yet, just because it is the toughest platform service to implement, both from a technological perspective, in the sense that real-time syncing of the cloud data would have to be achieved. You're going to have to do stuff like load distribution, and you're going to have to make sure that there's like minimal downtime, which is pretty difficult to achieve with the internet these days. But another main disadvantage would be the cost of keeping the cloud service active. And not the cost to the user, but the cost to you as the game developer. This is actually pretty expensive to keep running. So we're probably just going to skip this for a bit and not implement this for our game just yet. Notable mention, so the company I'm currently working at, HoYoverse, for our game Genshin Impact, we recently launched the cloud service for the regions of Singapore and Malaysia. So these two regions now get to experience like full cloud gaming of Genshin Impact. Don't even have to install or patch the game regularly anymore. And for those familiar with the game, it is a pretty big game. So this was a pretty welcome move by the players. Hopefully they roll it out to more regions like Portugal. Yeah. Okay. Great. Now we have implemented those 3 platform services, and our game is running smoother than ever. The game is gaining traction. We are getting more players. And with more players comes more feedback. So one of the feedback we're getting from our players now is, I would love to play with my friends. We want to play with friends. A lot of single-player games are really fun until you realize that you've completed all the missions and there's nothing else to do, and the social element is lacking, right? I believe, especially during COVID, what we saw was that when everyone was shut in due to the lockdown, most of the single-player games, they saw a decline in number of players, and the ones that had like a lot of new active players were actually the multiplayer games, stuff like. I remember there was that game that was really popular back in Singapore. It's called Imposter. I'm not sure if it's popular here as well. Yeah. Another feedback is we want to play on other devices. So some players don't want to play on a small mobile phone, for instance. They want to play on their PlayStation, console devices, Xbox, Switch, maybe even their personal laptops or computers. Um, so that's cross-platform support. Players want clothes. Players are no longer happy seeing their little dudes in green run around naked. They want clothes, especially now that we have multiplayer service. The players want to be able to set themselves apart from their friends. They want to have more personalization, totally understandable. And to support all of these services, why not we go ahead and improve the payments infrastructure so that we can implement a more continuous improvement loop? Because let's face it, these aren't the first feedbacks that we are receiving, and they are not going to be the last either. So a continuous feedback loop, continuous improvement loop works in this way, right? So first, we're going to improve the payments infrastructure. We're going to work on many more monetization models. This is going to help generate more revenue for the game. And then we can reinvest that money back into the game to power, firstly, the multiplayer servers, right? Multiplayer servers don't come free. These features aren't going to develop themselves. So that we can build more and more features, hire more devs, expand the team, so on and so forth. So yeah. Okay, let's go ahead and add these platform services. These 4 platform services. Firstly, before we can start implementing multiplayer experience for our users, we have to improve the accounts infrastructure. Previously, we may have had a simpler rudimentary accounts infrastructure where the account of the user is simply tied to the user's purchase of the game. For instance, if it's on the App Store, it's tied to the Apple user. If it's on Play Store, tied to the Google account. And then, but this time we're going to, in order to support cross-platform support and multiplayer servers, we need to upgrade the accounts infrastructure. What does this mean? There are many ways you can do this. For instance, we can start supporting usernames and passwords. That's the simplest, the most primitive form of account login. We can implement email binding, maybe mobile phone binding. We can implement other forms of binding, right? Like these days, there's so many passport sign-in options. We have Apple sign-in, we have Google login, we have Facebook login, we have Samsung, etc. The list is endless these days. And we can support all of that, because why not? And then in addition to that, implementing all of these additional sign-in options will also help our players in the event that they forget their passwords, or they somehow get locked out of the account. They do have an additional sign-in option, or they at least have two-factor authentication means of 2FA. Okay, now that we have a good accounts infrastructure in place, we can now set up the multiplayer servers. The multiplayer servers will include things like matchmaking and leaderboards, and what they do essentially is allow our players to play with their friends cooperatively or PvP, or maybe even just complete strangers, right? So this would be a key feature in creating a more social element to the game. Thirdly, we have cross-platform support. Cross-platform support, pretty self-explanatory. We are going to, it's a platform service that allows us to support new platforms and many platforms easily and quickly. Platforms such as iOS and Android, that would be for mobile. And then we have PC in the works. We have the console games, Switch, PlayStation, Xbox, etc. So these days, you'll be very happy to know that cross-platform support is easier than ever, thanks to cloud computing, the advent of web apps. And these days, in fact, most of these platforms actually support web apps. So it's actually going to be pretty easy to implement cross-platform support if you build all of these components. For instance, your login systems and so on and so forth. If you build them as if you build them using like modern-day JavaScript frameworks, for instance, AngularJS, Vue.js, React.js, and then you just link them together with just about any backend, Golang, Node.js, anything you want. Yeah, and you package them as Webpacks and just very modular web SDK components. you're actually going to be able to implement cross-platform support super easily by just allowing the game teams to plug and play whichever component, whichever platform service they want. Yeah, so not a big problem. Of course, there may be instances where more native features are required, such as if they want to access the camera of your laptop or mobile phone, or if they want to access the gyroscope or something. That can also be developed separately, but that will all go under cross-platform support. And finally, we have the payments infrastructure. So I think, yeah, for payments infrastructure, we have many monetization models out these days, especially for mobile games. First, of course, we have the advertisements, right? Many mobile games these days offer advertisements within the game as like advertisement banners, or maybe if you try to perform an action, they'll ask you to watch a video. Even YouTube does that. And then, we could do something like offer like an in-app purchase to buy the full game that actually removes the advertisement banners. Other monetization models would be in the form of maybe you could offer a battle pass that would be sort of like a monthly subscription service for the game that gives you premium items. And talking about premium items, we can also have like loot boxes. We can have things like virtual currency. If I use Genshin Impact as an example, that would be Primal Gems. So many ways to improve the monetization model of the game, increase the revenue that's being funded and reinvested into the game for this continuous improvement loop. And to support all of these various monetization models, we're going to need a much more robust, much more customized and highly flexible payments infrastructure. I won't go into detail about how that was implemented in my company, but basically the payment infrastructure has to be really flexible to support all of this, because if you think about it, if you had a game company, a large game company, typically you're not just supporting one game, but you're supporting a multitude of games, and many of these games may want a different kind of payment infrastructure service, right? Maybe some of them, they don't want to do this whole gacha system or battle pass or loot boxes or whatever. They may just want something else entirely, and you're going to have to be able to support that with the same payment infrastructure. So flexibility is key. On top of that, we can go ahead and add new payment methods, such as, for credit cards, we have MasterCard and Visa. I understand in Portugal, there's something called Multibanco. I have not tried that myself. And then we also have all the other methods like Google Pay, Apple Pay, so on and so forth. And why not also support cryptocurrency, because it's getting pretty popular these days, right? Imagine if our users could pay in Bitcoin. Okay. And now we see that our initial game has grown into quite an impressive ecosystem surrounded by a multitude of platform services. But this looks really impressive, but this really is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to platform services today for modern day games, especially for those AAA games from the large gaming companies. These are just a few of the other platform services out there that surround these games, and I won't go into each and every one of them because honestly it's a lot to talk about here, and I am losing my voice on stage right now. I'm just going to grab a cup of water. 1 second. But I'll have you guys have a look at this while I drink the water. So in summary, platform services are, they are sort of like the unsung heroes of modern gaming. They work behind the scenes. We don't really see them very much, but they are crucial in the success of a game today. And especially for games with a very big player base, we see that typically the platform service ecosystem evolves, as a game becomes more mature, as the game company becomes more mature, as they reach a certain critical mass, they are going to need a new platform service. And in the case of Genshin Impact, so I can't share the exact figures for how many players we have, because that's bound by non-disclosure. But this is a publicly available information from activeplayer.io. And what we see here is that in March, just last month this year, we had, I think, almost 70 million active players per month in March, and with an average of 16 million players on Genshin Impact. So it is no exaggeration to say that modern day, big game companies have to be able to support the scale of tens of millions of players for each of their games. Professional game development is like professional cooking. So just bringing the attention back to the polvo a la guerrero, everyone's favorite dish. We see here that typically in a big restaurant. So I actually did some research on this, on how the more famous restaurants cook this dish. Typically they have one chef cleaning and boiling the octopus, and then they have a second chef simultaneously skinning and slicing and dicing the potatoes, the garlic, the onions, everything else that needs to go into the dish. And then finally, we have a third chef doing the, piecing together all of the various elements of the dish, disparate elements, and roasting it, right? So we can liken the first chef to being the game developer, the second one to being, the platform services engineers, and then the third one to being DevOps, right? Because they help us to integrate. There we go. So typically in a game company today, it's just like in a professional kitchen setting, it's not very feasible to expect the game team to be able to produce an amazing game, but at the same time have to worry about all the other little knobs and whistles, right? All the other platform services in the ecosystem, and on top of that, they also have to maintain that ecosystem. It's not very feasible to expect them to do that. And that is why typically game teams, these game companies, they split the work up into game team and platform team and any other teams as required. So why split up the platform team from the game team? If the advantages were not already clear enough, I've broadly categorized them into these three main categories. First, specialization. Typically, the game teams do not have the subject matter experts. They don't have the security specialists. They don't have the scalability and infrastructure specialists required to really, produce a good platform service. So specialization allows the game team to do what they do best, just focus on just building an amazing game, and then leaving the platform services to the platform team. So that they wouldn't really have to worry, and they know that the game is everything is just going to come out just fine, and the game's going to be okay on launch. Secondly, efficiency. It is way more efficient to have the platform team just doing everything, as previously mentioned, because they have the specialists. But I believe this is very closely tied to specialization. Because they are specializing on the platform stuff, they are not really distracted, right, doing many other stuff, and they can really just have the highest output, just work on producing the best systems possible. And another thing that helps with efficiency is in larger game companies is that large game companies typically have one platform team for many games, right, that support all of the games. Why this is so is because if you have already built up a very advanced payments infrastructure, okay, let's use HoYoverse again as an example, my current company. If we build up a very advanced payments infrastructure for Genshin Impact, why wouldn't we reuse that payments infrastructure for Honkai Star Rail, right? and we have an upcoming game. Probably we might reuse the same infrastructure. I don't know. I can't tell you too much. So efficiency. And finally, the last point is scalability. Scalability in the sense that many of these things like game servers, multiplayer servers, database servers, stuff like this, typically, it does not make sense to have to purchase like individual blocks of these servers and spin up like individual docking containers for each and every one of them. Like, because game companies have the ability to reuse components, reuse platform services, they are able to like sort of like just do like a copy paste, or they can just like scale up vertically and horizontally much easier. And this has a lot of cost savings also. So these are the three main benefits of why we want to separate the platform team from the game team. Okay, so hopefully I have now convinced all of you about the importance of the platform team and help to raise some awareness on it. And hopefully you guys are now interested in joining a platform team sometime in the near future. Platform team is not simply, so the platform team is not simply limited to just a software engineer like myself. We have many other roles. For instance, we have product owners, we have project managers, UI UX designers, data analysts, data engineers. We have the DevOps guys, operations, quality assurance, site reliability. Wow, the list goes on, right? And we even have roles you might not have thought about, like in-house legal and HRBP. So really, there is a place for everyone on the platform team. And the best part about it is that it's industry agnostic. So earlier on, you saw my career jump from banking to social media to gaming. And that's because in each of these industries, I was working within a platform team. So a platform team really is industry agnostic. The skills are very cross-transferable. If you are doing payments in a bank, you can also do payments in a game company, for instance. And that, I believe, brings us to the end of my keynote address. Thank you so much to SINFO for organizing this amazing conference. Big round of applause to the SINFO organizers. Yeah. I'll now open the floor up to questions, and if you would love to connect, feel free to find me on LinkedIn. I shared my profile earlier, but kind of got covered up there. There it is. Yeah.
Sorry, sadly, we don't have time for questions here, only on the showcase. Jun will be available on the showcase if you have any questions. However, we are going to pick the winner for this session's keynote right now. For the Corsair sponsored this prize, and it's a HX 80 Max wireless RGB headset, and I hope someone will very much cherish it. Blueberry Geek, please come up stage. If Blueberry Geek is not here, we'll have to re-roll the prize, so please, if you are present, show yourself. Okay, Flip Silva.